Hi everybody, in this video we're talking about completing the square. Completing the square is talking about the process of turning an expanded kind of standard form quadratic like this into this form here. So x plus, some number squared and then plus some number. So our goal is to come up with these two question mark numbers here. Notice that if either of these numbers is negative, then you end up with a plus sign in front. So this is just sort of a general form with the positives. All right, so we'll start by talking about the steps that you'll follow every time, and then we'll use those steps in a couple of examples. So the first thing I normally do is just kind of clear some space after the bx term. So this b and this c in examples, like you can see below here, the b and the c are filled in with numbers. So I leave a space right here, and what we're going to do is add and subtract the same number in this blank space. So I could do like plus 100 minus 100, plus 17 minus 17, and it would technically be a valid move, right? Because if I add and then subtract it, I haven't actually net changed anything. So we are going to add and subtract exactly the right number. So the right number is this coefficient right here, so the b number, that divided by 2 squared. So you're going to take that number, divide it by 2, and square it. So like in this first example here, the b is a 6. So we would do 6 over 3 is 2, and then, 6 over 2 is 3, there we go. And then 3 squared is 9. So you plug that number in, that's your perfect number here. So we're going to add whatever that number is, and subtract whatever that number is. You'll always add and then subtract, even though minus and then plus is fine. The reason that we're doing this is because in the next step, the first 3 terms should factor perfectly into a square. So specifically what it's going to be is x plus b over 2. So without the square, just half of this coefficient here, squared. That's what these 3 will factor into. And then what's left over is minus b over 2 squared plus c. So then your last step, these two are just numbers, so you would just combine them into whatever number and you're actually there. So this factoring step here, this looks really bizarre kind of in general. What you can do is use the shortcut I've shown you here, where it's just this is what it factors into, that's why we picked this number. Or in context, you're probably going to look at these 3 terms and your brain is going to start to factor it in the way that you're used to. Either way should lead you to the same answer. All right, so let's use these steps in this first example here. So I have x squared plus 6x minus 3, and I want to write it in this completed square form here. So I'm going to start by just clearing that extra space after the 6x. Now I want to decide what number to add and subtract right here. So I'm going to say, okay, b over 2 squared is 6 over 2 squared, and I'm not screwed up this time. 6 over 2 is 3, so I have 9. Okay, so I'm going to say plus 9 minus 9. Alright, so let me use a different color just because I accidentally made this a little cluttered. So these first 3 terms factor into a perfect square. So you can use this shortcut here, and you'll get x plus 3 squared, because my b is the 6. Or you can kind of look at this and use your own factoring method and say, okay, x plus 3, and then you kind of wind up in that same place anyways. So we have x plus 3 squared. That's what everything in the red rectangle amounts to. And then minus 9 minus 3 never got used. So my very last step here is to just combine minus 9 minus 3 is really minus 12. So I have x plus 3 squared minus 12 as my answer. Okay, let's try another one. X squared minus 10x plus 4. Again, I'll just kind of give myself some space to work after the 10, or the 10x rather. All right, so this one's a little bit different because the b is negative. So all the moves that we had at the top, this kind of stuff, this all still works as long as you keep the minus sign along with the b. Really the minus sign is going to show up right here is the only important part. Okay. So my b is negative 10. So b over 2 squared is negative 10 over 2 squared. That's negative 5 squared is 25. All right, so I'm still going to do plus 25 minus 25. Always add and then subtract. And then we say, okay, these first three terms, I should have engineered this to factor into a perfect square. That's the reason that we picked the 25, because now this factors into x minus 5, x minus 5. So you can do kind of your normal factoring thing and get there, or if you use the shortcut, just remember, this b is a negative 10, so you'll get x minus 5 squared. So we have x minus 5 squared, and then minus 25 plus 4 didn't get used. So I'll take one more step and combine those two, and I get minus 21. All right, so my final answer here is x minus 5 squared minus 21. If you get really nervous and want to double check your answer, you would just FOIL this out and then include the 21, and you should end up right back where you started. All right, so just for good measure, we'll do one last example where the numbers are really awkward. I don't expect that you're gonna see ones that are kind of this gross in your completing the square adventures as they show up in trig substitution problems, but you know, it's worth mentioning just that you feel comfortable. Okay, so x squared plus x. One thing that's strange here, of course, is that c is 0. There is no extra number. So I have this extra space, and you can write a plus 0 if you really want it to look the same, but it's not necessary. And my b is 1. This is where things get a little weird. So there's kind of no coefficient, which means there's a 1 here. So b over 2 squared is 1 over 2 squared. A half times a half is a quarter. So I'm going to add and subtract a quarter, or 1/4 here. This is where that factoring shortcut, the x plus b over 2 shortcut here, this is really handy because now I'm factoring something with fractions and I really don't want to deal with factoring this. All the factoring rules, you know, work the same. It's just you have to consider fractions where we normally just consider integers. But with the shortcut, we say, okay, it should be x plus b over 2 squared. So it should just be that. Now I don't have to worry about it. And then that minus a fourth didn't get used. And lucky for us, we don't have to do anything more with fractions because there wasn't a c value to deal with there.